Hi, it's Carrie. Welcome to PubMed, Find Subject Headings. In this video, I will demonstrate how to find and use subject headings. You'll find important links in the video description below, including a link to a digital handout that I've created with instructions for each task and a link to PubMed. PubMed uses subject headings called MESH, or Medical Subject Headings. You'll mostly hear me refer to them as a MESH term. MESH terms index life and biomedical science literature for Medline, but they do not index other content in PubMed like PMC or the NCBI bookshelf material. MESH terms have been applied by humans, which is to say that sometimes they might seem flawed or archaic. You can find them on the home page under Explore. Keep in mind that new MESH terms are introduced every year, and some MESH terms get replaced or retired. I would like to encourage searchers to use MESH terms where they can, because they work like a hashtag you'd encounter in social media, except that they're predefined. Using a MESH term can help you identify relevant literature regardless of the terminology used by the authors in the title or abstract, and it accounts for variations in spelling. In other words, MESH terms are a finding aid. Not all literature gets indexed with MESH, and generally there might be a 6-month delay for new literature that is within the scope of Medline to be appropriately indexed. So, if you only search with MESH terms, you may miss the very newest literature. You can access the MESH database under Explore. Remember that you're searching for subject headings, not literature. Let's look for an appropriate MESH term for peroxisomal disorders, which are a group of inherited metabolic disorders. When I start typing, I can see some suggestions and select them if they are more appropriate. It's also important that you spell out the whole word you're searching for and spell it correctly, otherwise it may not be recognized. Now, I want to introduce you to the anatomy of a MESH record. Most MESH records will contain a definition and sometimes a year introduced. This will tell you if it is a very new or a very old term and how far back you can expect the literature to go when you search with it. Every MESH record will contain a set of subheadings, which you can use to narrow your search down. You also have options to restrict this heading to a major topic or to search this term only and no narrower or child terms. You will also see entry terms, previous indexing, and the representation of the term within the MESH hierarchy. All that being said, you do not have to search with a MESH term. You can also search with a MESH term only. Best practice, at least for me, is to search with MESH terms and additional keywords so that I can ensure capturing not only literature regardless of how it's been indexed, but also literature whether or not it's been indexed with MESH. Let's look at the record for the MESH term peroxisomal disorders. I'll drop a link in the video description for this term if you'd like to pause and follow along. Here we see the definition, just in case there is any ambiguity. Next, we see the year introduced. Searching with peroxisomal disorders as a MESH term only will return literature back to 1996, with older records based on this term's organization within the MESH hierarchy. Here we see subheadings. These are sometimes useful to narrow our search. To activate a subheading, simply click the radio button next to the subheading. We can use them if we want, but we don't have to. We can choose to restrict our search to records where this term is a major topic. We can also choose to search this term only and not narrower terms in the MESH hierarchy. This is called explode or unexplode. Both of these are optional. The next section is entry terms. Entry terms can help us think of additional terminology, and we are welcome to add them in our search. But if we do, we need to add them manually. Entry terms also tell us how automatic term mapping will behave. If a PubMed searcher entered any of these terms in the PubMed search box, it is likely that it would map to this MESH term. Automatic term mapping is unique to PubMed. When we enter search terms without quotes or field tags, the platform will attempt to map to relevant subject headings and keywords. Previous indexing tells us what terms were used for similar topics prior to this term's introduction in 1996. Previous indexing is not always present. Previous mesh terms for these topics were lipid metabolism, inborn errors, and metabolism, inborn errors. We can consider using these in our search as well, especially if we wanted to see older literature. The last thing we see in a mesh entry is the mesh hierarchy. This tells us where on the mesh tree this term is located. This is an interesting example. The term peroxisomal disorders appears on both genetic diseases, inborn, and metabolic diseases branches. We see that there are 7 narrower terms below peroxisomal disorders. We could choose one of those terms to search with instead if we were interested in any of those particular conditions. To use this or any mesh term in a search, navigate to the upper right-hand corner of the mesh entry and click Add to Search Builder. It comes across in quotes with the mesh field tag already attached. Then you can hit Search. You'll activate a PubMed search where you can browse the results as usual. Next up, I'll discuss subheadings.